Hello, welcome Dee Dee and Rick. How's audio, video, connection, all that? Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sukho viveko tuttassa sutta dhammassa passato avyapajang sukang loke pana bhute susamyamo. Sukha viragata loke kamanang samattikamo asmi manassayo vineo etang ve paramang sukang sabbang paravasang dukkang sabbang isariyang sukang sadharane vinyanti yoga hi doratikkamati. Arakatena kayena michaditi gatena chatina midda bibhutena vasang marasa gacchati tasmarakita chittassa samma sankappa gocharo sammaditi purekaro nyatvana udaya bayang tina midda bibhubiku sabba dugati ojaheti. Sukarang sadhuna sadhu sadhu papena dukarang papang papena sukarang papang ariyehi dukarang. In English, blissful is detachment for one who is content, for one who has learned the Dhamma and who sees. Blissful is freedom from anger in the world, restraint towards living creatures. Blissful is passionlessness in the world, the overcoming of sensual desires, but the abolishing of the conceit I am, that is truly the supreme bliss. All subjection to another is painful, full mastery is bliss, partners share in affliction, bonds are difficult to overcome. Forsake bad destinations. With unguarded body and encumbered by wrong view, overcome by lethargy and torpor, one goes along in the power of Mara. So let one's mind be guarded, let one's domain be right thought. By putting right view to the forefront, by understanding rise and fall, and overcoming lethargy and torpor, a bhikkhu will forsake all bad destinations. For the good to do what is good is easy, for the bad to do what is good is difficult. For the bad to do what is bad is easy, for the noble to do what is bad is difficult. All right, welcome Gregory, welcome Tom. We will get started in about a minute or so with our meditation. Welcome, Shay. All right, let's get started and meditate. I think there's a few of us and everybody here has done meditation with me multiple times. So we'll just meditate together. No need for a guided meditation. Choose the meditation that you like to do. All right, slowly open your eyes, becoming aware of the room around you and your body's position in it. Coming back to the live stream. Welcome to Dhammapalooza, the festival of Dhamma with the Maggaseka community, where we do a variety of different Dhamma-related activities. We've already done some chanting, we've done meditation. Now I see a few questions I'm going to answer, and if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. If not, we can read a sutta, or maybe do a little Dhamma talk if you have a topic you'd like me to discuss. We'll see how it goes. Didi asks about Lunar New Year. Did the New York Indonesians celebrate New Year in any special way? Happy New Year, Year of the Horse. So yeah, the Indonesian community here, as far as I can tell, the overwhelming majority of them are their ancestry is from China. So yeah, it's a big thing. You can, let's see, can I see the year of the horse and all that? They have all the decorations going. So yeah, next Sunday is their celebration. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be there for a little bit of it to do some blessings and things like that. But they're gonna have a big party and it's gonna last a long time next Sunday. So that's what they're doing. Welcome, Jay, Soma, Visaka, Lorraine. Welcome. All right. So, next question, Gregory. With the 501c3, does that impact all future donations, or will there be a need to set up a new fund set up? So, Maggaseka, which is it's officially existing nonprofit in Colorado, we've already set up a bank account for it. I've hesitated to use it yet because we've been waiting on the 501c3. Because I really want to make sure that essentially from a certain point, all donations, the website, everything, all donations will go directly to 501c3 Maggaseka stuff, right? And then I'll be covered under that. Just like you go to Bhavana, you go to Buy Gear, you go to all these places, the support for the monks is covered under that umbrella. And basically any donations that are kind of left over that have been given to me, I'm going to use for my personal things, so that as Maggaseka is growing, it doesn't have to worry about like if I have medications or anything like that until that fund is done. And then once that those donations, which I don't use a lot of, so over the years it's kind of accrued. But once that kind of fund is done, then all support is under the, for myself, for future monks, everything is under that Maggaseka umbrella. And it's all going to go to this bank account. And so that's basically the plan. Once we get the paperwork for the 501c3, we have to go back to Wachovia, which is the not Wachovia, Wells Fargo, which is the the bank who we have the account with, and then make it a 501c3 account, and then we'll go from there. So like all the funds, all the donations to the that I set up that donor box and all that stuff for rent for Maggaseka Vihara coming up. I have not touched any of those funds. They are still in there. I've not taken them out because I've been waiting for this. Once 501c3 is done, once all that is set up, all that goes in there, and from that point on, also on the website, the Venmo, the PayPal, all those different things will go always only to the 501c3 bank account. So that's kind of the plan for now. So Didi, people don't have to do it via donor box, but it helps me to. The donor box things really kind of makes things a little easier to know what is specifically set for rental. So then I could say, okay, we're getting this amount in every week, or every month, I should say. There are people who want to donate who are waiting for 501c3, who will donate like a decent sizable chunk to rental, but they're waiting for 501c3 to go through. And they're not going to go through the donor box, but at least I know what they're sending, what it's for, and I can account for that. But if we didn't have any kind of like organization, it would be tough to know what are people sending in, what is it for. As you become an organization, you're going to have to earmark these different funds for different things and understand what people will donate for a specific reason, and you kind of have to make sure that that money goes to that specific reason. So it's important to kind of account for these things. Right. So I'm going to ask a question. Bhante, you mentioned last week that there were monks who go too hardcore and burn themselves out in the beginning stages of the tracks of their practice. Did you struggle with that as well in the beginning stages? Or did you make sure not to do this and were well aware to begin with? I was not well aware of it to begin with, but by the time I became a monk, I knew what was what. Remember, when I became a monk, I had already been meditating over 10 years by the time I became a full monk. So I wasn't like a young newbie when I went to the monastichood, and I had already experienced going too far, right? And knowing like the Soma Sutta, knowing picking up my theme, knowing the balance, knowing the right tune when things are in tune, and then kind of keeping that tune. So that was not something that was a barrier for me when I first became a monk. I had already kind of known that, the monk's life is like it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? In the beginning, you have lots of zeal and stuff like that, and I definitely did. But when that wears off, what are you still in robes for? Do you still want to be in robes? Right? All of these questions come up. And if you're kind of not ready for that, if you go too hard, it might be easy to kind of realize, well, no, this isn't for me, I'm gone, see you later. Whereas other people could be like, well, I'm going through a real bad time, but I don't want to be anywhere else. I want to stay in robes. And then maybe they don't look like the most advanced meditator or anything like that, but they're able to stay. So so many different paths, so many different ways of monasticism and stories of monastics and kind of their path and their struggles and what was tough for them. And a lot of times what's tough for that an individual monk is not tough for another individual monk. It's kind of a individualized path in that regard. All right. Hello, Tiffany. Do you know me from like Insight Timer, or how did you find the channel? It's good to have you with us. How long did it take to find a groove or the right tune in the monastic path? Years. Years. It's you have to go too far. I mean, you kind of have to go too far before you realize, okay, I've gone too far. This is something that takes years. Yeah. So and this is kind of like how I say that, I have the way I describe my mind is like I have a drill instructor and a therapist, right? And theirs are like, so if I have, if I'm kind of getting a little too like either lazy or a little afraid or a little whatever, like the drill instructor comes and kicks me in the butt and says, come on, get up, stop feeling sorry for yourself, go. The path is hard. The Buddha said the path is hard. Get over yourself and get moving, right? And I was like, okay, good. Yeah, I'm going. Let's go. And then there's times where I need the therapist. It's kind of like, oh, it's okay. You're doing the best you can. It's okay. You can take a break, retreat for a little bit, but get back in there. So there's like these kind of different kind of modes in my mind that kind of keep a balance, right? Because sometimes you need a swift kick. Sometimes you need even maybe like a teacher or a Kalyanamitta to call you out on your crap and get you moving. And sometimes you need a lot of compassion for yourself because it's a tough road. So it takes a while to understand this balance. Well, Tiffany, I'm glad you made the jump over from Insight Timer. So it's good to have you with us. This is my main live stream of the week, Dhammapalooza on Mondays. So let's see. I'll start reading, and we'll see if any questions pop in. You can ask any questions anytime. I'll keep an eye on the chat, either about the sutta I'm reading or anything else, and we'll go as along as we go. So, the shorter simile of the heartwood. And remember, the heartwood is the most desirable, most important part of the tree. And the other simile, the longer simile, we saw people who were thinking that this was the best part of something and taking away the worst parts because of their delusion. So this is when in the suttas, when we're talking about the heartwood, we're talking about the best of something, the most excellent. So I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Then the Brahmin Pingalakocha went up to the Buddha and exchanged greetings with him. When the greetings and polite conversation were over, he sat down to one side and said to the Buddha, "Worthy Gautama, there are those ascetics and Brahmins who lead an order and a community, and tutor a community. They're well-known and famous religious founders, deemed holy by many people. Namely, Purana Kassapa, the bamboo-staffed ascetic Gosala, Ajita of the hair blanket, Pakuda Kachayana, Sanjaya Belatiputta, and the Jain ascetic of the Nyatika clan." So these are leaders of various other samana sects. The samanas were the men and women who checked out of regular society, went into the woods to try to find enlightenment, and they had all kinds of different views, perspectives, and practices. And so we see the Buddha engaging with these other sects in the suttas quite often. According to their own claims, did all of them have direct knowledge, or none of them, or only some? All right, just checking the chat. So this is a person asking the Buddha about the attainments of these other leaders. And the Buddha says, enough, Brahmin, let this be. Let this be according to their own claim. So let the question be. Don't bother with the question. And he reiterates the question here. According to their own claims, did all of them have direct knowledge, and none of them, or only some? I will teach you the Dhamma. Listen and apply your mind well. I will speak. Yes, worthy sir, Pingalakocha replied. The Buddha said this. Suppose there was a person in need of heartwood, and while wandering in search of heartwood, he'd come across a large tree standing with heartwood. But passing over the heartwood, softwood bark and shoots, he'd cut off the branches and leaves and leave imagining they were heartwood. A delusional person. It sounds like there's some fireworks going off. This is usually a very quiet area, except for Lunar New Year. All right. If a person with clear eyes saw him, they'd say, this gentleman doesn't know what heartwood, softwood, bark, shoots, or branches and leaves are. That's why he passes them over, cuts off the branches and leaves, and left imagining they were heartwood. Whatever he needs to make from heartwood, he won't succeed. Suppose there was another person in need of heartwood. He'd cut off the shoots and leaves, imagining they were heartwood. Suppose there was another person in need of heartwood. He'd cut off the bark and leave, imagining it was heartwood. Suppose there was another person in need of heartwood. He'd cut off the softwood and leave, imagining it was heartwood. Suppose there was another person in need of heartwood, and while wandering in search of heartwood, he'd come across a large tree standing with heartwood. He'd cut out just the heartwood and leave, knowing it was heartwood. If a person with clear eyes saw him, they'd say, this gentleman knows what his heartwood, softwood, bark, shoots, or branches and leaves are. That's why he cut out just the heartwood and left knowing what is heartwood. Whatever he needs to make from heartwood, he will succeed. In the same way, take a certain individual who goes forth from lay life to homelessness, thinking, I'm swamped by rebirth, old age, and death, by sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. I'm swamped by suffering, mired in suffering. Hello, Jim. Welcome. Yes, Tiffany, you can go on the website, and there's an option to contact me. So you can contact me from there. All right. Hey, Tiffany, if it's just a short question, that's fine to ask on Dhammapalooza. But if it's like a longer practice question, it's better to do email. So yeah, so go to the website and send me a contact, and I'll get back to you. Hopefully I can make an end to this entire mass of suffering. When they've gone forth, they generate possessions, honor, and popularity. Oof, the worst things to do as a monk. There's another website. There's another sutta where the Buddha says, dreadful monks is praise, honor, and gain. Nothing more destructive to the holy life than praise, honor, and gain. And here Bhante Sujato translates that as possessions, honor, and popularity. They're happy with that. And they've got all they wished for. And they glorify themselves and put others down on account of that. I'm the one with possessions, honor, and popularity. These other mendicants are obscure and insignificant. They become lazy and slack on account of these possessions, honor, and popularity, not generating enthusiasm or trying to realize those things that are better and finer. They're like an individual who mistakes branches and leaves for heartwood, I say. Next, take an individual who has gone forth from the faith, from the lay life to homelessness. When they've gone forth, they generate possessions, honor, and popularity. They're not happy with that and haven't got all they wished for. They don't glorify themselves and put others down on account of that. They don't become lazy and slack regarding their possessions, honor, and popularity, but generate enthusiasm and try to realize those things that are better and finer. They achieve accomplishment in ethics. They're happy with that. They've got all they wished for. They glorify themselves and put others down on that account. So what he's saying by they're happy with that is like that's as far as they go, right? They achieve some level of ethics and they're happy with that, and they start getting a big-headed about it, and they glorify themselves and put others down on account of that. I'm the one who's ethical, of good character. These other mendicants are unethical, of bad character. They become lazy, slack regarding their accomplishment in ethics, not generating enthusiasm, and try to realize those things that are better and finer. They're like an individual who mistakes shoots for heartwood, I say. Next, take an individual who has gone forth out of faith from lay life to homelessness. They achieve accomplishment in ethics and immersion. So they have ethics and jhanas, right, or samadhi. They become lazy and slack regarding these accomplishment and immersion, not generating enthusiasm or trying to realize those things that are better and finer. They're like an individual who mistakes bark for heartwood, I say. Next, take an individual who has gone forth out of faith from the lay life to homelessness. They achieve accomplishment in ethics, immersion, and knowledge and wisdom, or vision. They become lazy and slack regarding their knowledge and vision, not generating enthusiasm or trying to realize those things that are better and finer. They're like the individual who mistakes softwood for heartwood, I say. Next, take an individual who has gone forth out of faith from the lay life to homelessness, thinking, I'm swamped by rebirth, old age, and death, by sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. I'm swamped by suffering, mired in suffering. Hopefully, I can find an end to this entire mass of suffering. When they've gone forth, they generate possessions, honor, and popularity. They're not happy with that and haven't got all they wished for. They don't glorify themselves or put others down on account of that. They don't become lazy and slack on account of their possessions, honor, and popularity, but generate enthusiasm and try to realize those things that are better and finer. They become accomplished in ethics. They're happy with that, but they haven't got all they wished for. They don't glorify themselves and put others down on account of that. They don't become lazy and slack regarding their accomplishment in ethics, but generate enthusiasm and try to realize those things that are better and finer. They become accomplished in immersion. They're happy with that, but they haven't got all they wished for. They don't glorify themselves and put others down on account of that. They don't become lazy and slack regarding their accomplishment and immersion, but generate enthusiasm and try to realize those things that are better and finer. So now we're into somebody who they've reached a certain level and like, okay, that's good, but they don't get all big-headed about it. They don't bolster their self or their ego or whatever you want to call it. And they know that they're not there yet. They have not reached the end. Like, this is the wise thing to have, right? No matter how far you go, you realize I'm not awakened yet. So I better be very careful of being humble, right? Because it's very easy to start looking down on other people. Oh, they're so deluded and ignorant. And you forget that you are also still deluded and ignorant, right? Even so, a being who is awakened without delusion or ignorance would not have a big head about it and look down on others. This is not how this works. So this is, the Buddha is explaining that this person is not content with just this part. They're going to keep going, right? They achieve knowledge and vision. They're happy with that, but they haven't got all they wished for. They don't glorify themselves and put others down on account of that. They don't become lazy and slack regarding their knowledge and vision, but generate enthusiasm and try to realize those things that are better and finer. And what are those things that are better and finer than knowledge and vision? Tiffany, you are not taking up any space. No worries. Right? Oh, Didi, you say you can hear the fireworks. Yeah, the chat is for everybody to chat in. No problems. You're not taking up any space. You're welcome here. All right. Okay, take a mendicant who, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unskillful qualities, enters or remains in the first jhana, which has the rapture and bliss born of seclusion, while placing the mind and keeping it connected. This is something better and finer than knowledge and vision. Furthermore, as the placing of the mind and keeping it connected are still, the mendicant enters or remains in the second jhana, which has the rapture and bliss born of immersion, with internal clarity and mind at one, without placing the mind and keeping it connected. This, too, is something finer, better and finer than knowledge and vision. Furthermore, with the fading away of rapture, a mendicant enters and remains in the third jhana, where they meditate with equanimity, mindful and aware, personally experiencing the bliss of which the noble ones declare, equanimous and mindful, one meditates in bliss. This, too, is something better and finer than knowledge and vision. Furthermore, with the giving up of pleasure and pain and the disappearance of former happiness and sadness, a mendicant enters and remains in the fourth jhana, without pleasure or pain, with pure equanimity and mindfulness. This, too, is something better and finer than knowledge and vision. Furthermore, a mendicant going totally beyond perceptions of form, with the disappearance of perceptions of impingement, not focusing on perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite, enters and remains in the dimension of infinite space. This, too, is something better and finer than knowledge and vision. Furthermore, a mendicant going totally beyond the dimension of infinite space, aware that consciousness is infinite, enters and remains in the dimension of infinite consciousness. This, too, is something better and finer than knowledge and vision. Furthermore, a mendicant going totally beyond the dimension of infinite consciousness, aware that there is nothing at all, enters and remains in the dimension of nothingness. This, too, is something better and finer than knowledge and vision. Furthermore, take a mendicant who, going totally beyond the dimension of nothingness, enters and remains in the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. This, too, is something better and finer than knowledge and vision. Furthermore, take a mendicant who, going totally beyond the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, enters and remains in the cessation of perception and feeling, and having seen with wisdom their defilements come to an end. If you have no idea what the Buddha is talking about here, about all these levels of meditation, don't worry. They're very refined and very complicated, and the Buddha doesn't go into a huge amount of detail compared to like the jhanas. These are what's called the arupa attainments. Sometimes people mistakenly and wrongly call them jhanas, but they're not. So these are formless, without form. Right? So these are high attainments that a person can have. Not needed for awakening, and not every person who is advanced meditator has them, but they are something that can be attained. Suppose there was a person in need of heartwood, and while wandering in search of heartwood, he'd come across a large tree standing with heartwood. He'd cut out just the heartwood and leave nothing with, knowing it was heartwood. Whatever he needs to make from heartwood, he will succeed. That's what the individual is like, I say. And so, Brahmin, this spiritual life is not lived for the sake of possessions, honor, or popularity, or for the accomplishment of ethics, or for the accomplishment in immersion, or for knowledge and vision. It is this unshakable freedom of heart or freedom of mind. That is the goal of the spiritual life, the core and the final end. When he had spoken, the Brahmin Pingalakocha said to the Buddha, "Excellent, worthy Gautama, excellent. From this day forth, may the worthy Gautama know me, remember me as a lay follower who has gone for refuge for life." Sadhu. All right. Any questions, comments, etc.? We have about 15 or 20 minutes left if we need it. I'm feeling somewhat energetic today, so I'm not about to pass out, which is good. All right. Hello, Manuel. Welcome. All right. Why don't we read some of the verses of the elder bhikkhus and bhikkhunis? Okay. Vasati. Struck down with grief for my son, deranged out of my mind, nude, my hair flying, I wandered here and there. I lived on rubbish heaps, in cemeteries and highways. For 3 years I wandered, stricken by hunger and thirst. Then I saw the Holy One, back at the city of Mithila. Tamer of the untamed, the awakened one fears nothing from any quarter. Regaining my mind, I paid homage and sat down. Out of compassion, Gautama taught me the Dhamma. After hearing his teaching, I went forth to homelessness, applying myself to the teacher's words. I realized the state of grace. All sorrows are cut off, given up, they end here. I fully understand the basis from which grief comes to be. We see this motif a couple different bhikkhunis, right? Losing family, losing children, kind of going a little nuts out of grief, and finding the Buddha. This is at least 2 or 3 women who became very prominent bhikkhunis, have that kind of backstory. Manuel asks, I have a non-related question. Is physical exercise practice in monasteries advised for monks? It's that question varies greatly. Most places I've experienced, the physical exercise, comes from like daily work and things like that. Although that's mostly talking about forest monasteries. Other places where you're not really doing a lot of physical work and you're kind of getting fed really good food and you're kind of gaining weight and things like that, which is a place like this. So I do things like I do jump rope and and various exercises every day, so I don't get too big, so it's the thing about exercise is like the monks at the time of the Buddha were wandering monks, right? So like every day was exercise. Their very literal existence was exercise, walking, up and down in the mountains, etc. So you do have today things like an obesity epidemic among monks in Thailand, right? Because they're kind of sitting around and they're getting fed really good fattening foods, and they gain weight. So this is a common thing. Most of the time, what I've seen in terms of exercise is like usually like there's an older monk and they have something where they need to, have a little bit of a rehab or whatever. And so the monastery will get like a treadmill or something like that, or some kind of exercise machine for them as a kind of rehab kind of a thing. But you don't really see like monks exercising in Theravada. They might do, but they mostly do it in private, and that's because of kind of like dignity issues and things like that. Like at Bhavana Society, Bhante Gunaratana was like, if you want to do yoga, that's okay, but you just don't do it in public. Which, as somebody who has done yoga as a monk a few times in public, you do worry about things like, flashing people and all kinds of, it's much better to not do that, in my opinion, in public. But there's at least one very senior monk who teaches yoga as part of his teachings and his retreats and things like that, who I greatly respect. But you will never come to any retreat or anything of me and have me teaching you yoga. That's just not how it's going to work. But yeah, so it really depends on the monk. It depends on the tradition. It depends on a lot of different things in terms of how exercise is viewed among monastics. Yeah, the hillside monks. Yeah, I have a kettlebell as well too, but I don't use it as much because the thing about the hillside hermitage monks is that they because I knew two young guys who are now disrobed who ordained at Bhavana while I was there. They actually went and spent a couple years when the monks at Hillside Hermitage were in Sri Lanka, and it was like going up the mountain where they were was very arduous, very arduous. And it's interesting if you know a little something about exercise. Before I became a monk, I was doing like marathons, military endurance events, and stuff like that. And when you really start to understand the body, you actually start to understand that there's a lot of different kind of like muscles and things in the body that if you don't use it and then all of a sudden you use it, you can hurt yourself. So, if you're like climbing, going up and down mountains and doing very arduous work every day, kind of doing a little exercise to kind of strengthen all those parts of your body, I think will save on injury for sure. But yeah, and there's even I've been to places where some of the younger monks, have stuff like kettlebells and things like that. It does exist. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I think being healthy is good because it's good for the sangha because you're around longer, you're healthy. You don't need to cost the sangha money because you have diabetes and this and that and yada yada yada. So being healthy is quite good. I see nothing wrong with that. You just have to worry about getting a little too kind of, I like my body, like a little too attached to that. But you'll always deal with a kind of perception of like, oh, look at them. They're like, what are they doing? Just sitting around lifting weights all day instead of meditating. And, some people kind of, their perception, whatever. But yeah, I like the Hillside Hermitage monks. They're an interesting bunch. Shay asked, Bhante, can you talk about how to deal with parents getting old and sick if we have enough time? Sure. This is a good question. It's a bit of a reversal, isn't it? Like when you were a baby, your parents took care of you, and as your parents get older, they need to be taken care of. They need some level of help and support. And that can be a hard thing to do when you have your own life, your own kids, all these kind of things. It can be a very hard thing to kind of be able to do that. But, think about yourself, right? Think about your kids. Like, you give a role model of your kids of, we're going to take care of grandma and grandpa or whatever, right? And then guess what's going to happen? The chances of your kids taking care of you when you get older are going to be much higher. Instead of throwing you in a home and forgetting about you, right? So, taking care of parents is a duty and a thing done out of respect in Buddhism, right? The parents are held in very high esteem in Buddhism. And so we want to support them and take care of them. But we also have to understand, and this is also kind of shows us that we're getting older, but we have to understand that old age, sickness, and death is life, right? And our parents are getting weaker. Our parents are dying. Our parents are getting sick, right? Nobody lives forever. Eventually, old age, sickness, and death catch up to you. So you reflect on that. You can see that, watch what your parents are going through as a reflection for yourself. You can reflect, if I don't die young, if I don't die early, I will also be at this point. How will I live? How will I react to being at this point? Right? This is a very important lesson of understanding that this will be my fate as well. Right? And maybe, and your parents are sick and frail, and that feels really sad to you because you remember them when they were younger. You remember them when they took care of you, or they were much more healthy and energetic, and they're not that anymore. They've moved into a different mode of life. I mean, I remember seeing that. 'Cause I was a monk already. Like when I left for the monastery, my parents were early 60s. Now my mom died last year at 72 or 3. My dad's now like 75, 76. And as I could, because I wasn't with them all the time and I was only seeing them in like after a large chunk of months, I actually saw the process. I saw like, this is, them now, and then boom, they're elderly, right? So it can be hard for people who are not practitioners, who are not meditators, who don't reflect on these things to see that transition. Right? And I also saw the transition of my mom being fully lucid and my mom basically not being there anymore, or like partially there sometimes, right? And so I kind of saw that transition as well, which is also something that can be very hard on a lot of people. It was hard on my mom with her father when she experienced that. Myself as a meditator and all, reflecting on these things all these years, it didn't really, it was just like, yeah, of course, this is what's going to happen. Like, and I remember just like, sitting there, I was like laughing with my mom because my mom was always so anxious. She very rarely laughed in life. But after, she kind of started going, there was a lot of things she would laugh at. And I remember I was just sitting with her and, you know, just like making things and laugh, because I can't remember. Like, I'm trying to think back in my life. I can't remember like, oh, I laughed with my mom. Like that just never happened. And here I am. My mom's kind of not there anymore. She's, you know, dementia and everything, and we're laughing. And I was like, okay, well, the mom I knew is gone. And I like just kind of recognized that in my mind. I said, okay, you know, the mother I grew up with is not here anymore. Basically, like, she's dead already. And so that kind of, once I, you know, I was like, okay, this is it. This is, you know, the end. So this is basically a different person at this point. And that was kind of like, okay, it's over. Right? It's like kind of like a saying goodbye, you know. So this is, you know, dealing with your parents getting older can be very hard for a variety of different reasons. But we want to make sure that we don't let that hardness or that being afraid or scared of that keep us from taking care of our parents, being with our parents. It's very important. All right. I think we're good. So let's share screen. Oh, let's see, where is it? Okay. No. Oh, I still haven't done that. I was going to bring up the what you call it, the merit chanting, but I still haven't put it in a place that I can easily find because I formatted my computer like a month ago. But anyway, okay. So we'll just do it now. Dukkha patta chani dukkha, bhaya patta chani bhaya, soka patta chani soka, hantu sabbe pipanio, etavata cha mehi sampatang punya sampatang, sabbe deva anumodantu, sabba sampati siddhya, akasata cha bhumata, deva naga mahidika, punyang tang anumoditva, charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief from suffering. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this dispensation, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. Well, we have come to the end of another Dhammapalooza. Sukhi Hotu, which means may you be happy and at ease. Practice well and be well, and may you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again, which could be tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. New York time for a morning monastery experience. Could be Insight Timer next Saturday, or could be next Monday for another Dhammapalooza. So have a good week.